Hello, I've been making this little test fixture, or bed of nails as they're sometimes called, and I thought I might just turn the camera on. It's not really something I was planning on making a video about, but when I'm halfway through something like this, I think, oh, it might be interesting for somebody to look at, so that's what I'm doing here. The purpose of one of these things is that you can take your PCB that you're developing or testing, you want to check something with it, and instead of having to solder on the pins to make connections and flash the firmware and stuff, you can just lay it down on here, and instantly you have all of the pins, or as many of the pins as you want, connected in some other convenient way. And the way that I've done it is I made this, or I had this made by JLC PCB, and it's more or less just the same layout as this. So that's the I/O mixer board, of course. And so what I want to do is I want to flash the firmware for the I/O mixer onto this, and I want to also run a test program first to check that the connections are working and the IMU is okay. And in particular, these RGB LEDs here, they've been a bit of a problem. Not recently, but a while ago, one of the batches I got, these RGB LEDs weren't really soldered on very well from JLC PCB. They seem to have figured it out now. Hasn't been a problem recently. But anyway, you want to make sure that everything is working and then flash the firmware. And you want to do it with as little manual work as possible. So that's what this is all about. So what I have here is just the same sort of layout as the I/O mixer itself, except on the side here we have one little SMD LED for every single pin. So that will let me just turn those pins off and on to visually confirm that they're connected and everything's working. Over here there's something that's slightly different. These pins are not actually on the I/O mixer. So that's this corner, top right corner there. There's no pins here, there's a little button. And if we look on the other side though, there are some pads, and I need to connect to these pads to flash the firmware. This is for the, what do you call it? For using one of these things. So this is what I've normally been using. And what I'd like to do though is try and use a Raspberry Pi, because I discovered recently that you can use a Raspberry Pi. I'm planning to use one of these little Raspberry Pi 0Ws that I've had kicking around for a while, not really doing anything with them. But you can use one of these to flash, or basically do the same job as this ST-Link dongle does, at least for F1 and I think maybe F3 or F4 or something like that. Yeah, but anyway, so what I've been doing in the past is I open up a terminal on my main computer, this computer that I'm using to record the video, and I have to figure out where I was keeping those files, and then I press this down very hard on those pads there at the back, wherever they've gone. Press that down really, really hard with one hand and try and hold it there, and with my other hand I'll hit the enter key on the terminal on the computer to try and flash it. And it kind of works most of the time, not even most of the time, maybe 1 out of 5 times it'll work. And it's just really annoying, and given that I want to do multiple flashings for the testing and then the actual firmware as well, that's just a real hassle, so decided to do it this way. Anyway, what we have here, I'll just zoom in on this a little bit for you. We have another one of those like test boards underneath that I've just drilled some holes into so that it fits on here. Use my CNC machine, of course, to make these holes perfectly like above the board below. And this is just a 1mm FR4, and we have some pins just sitting in there at the moment. They're not stuck in, but what those are, I believe these are called Pogo pins. So they'll be, if you're looking for these, by the way, this is what you want, P75 E2 or E3. And they're just a very, very small little thing. So small, actually. I was really surprised when I got them to see how small they were. And there's a sort of a brassy bit at the bottom, which is a tube, and then this bit at the top has a little spring in it. And this particular one has a kind of a conical shape on the head, and the idea is that that will sit into one of these holes like that, and it will help to center itself. If it's a little bit off, because it's conical, it will kind of like sit into the right place, and then the pressure will hopefully cause an electrical connection to be held. And then for these other ones though, where I want to connect to these flat pads, I'm going to try this other style, which again it's a spring. Oops, that's the back of it. Oh no, that's the front of it, sorry. Yeah, so this one is going to be really hard to see, but it actually has a sort of a crown shape on it, and there's 3 or maybe 4 little sharp little points on there. And again, it's sprung though. Ooh, it's quite sharp. So the idea is that at least one of those little points on there will be able to touch onto the pads on the bottom there and connect like that. And then to put those into, I have seen people solder these Pogo spring pins directly onto their PCB like that. They don't quite fit in that hole though. You could probably jam them in, but it didn't seem right. And I also heard that you're supposed to do it a little bit more properly with these receptacles. So this is now an R75. So P75 was the Pogo and R75 is the receptacle. And these are just a plain pin, like a normal pin header sort of pin on one side, and on the other side is a little hole or receptacle. So the idea is you can put one of these in here. It's not focusing very well, is it? See if we can focus there. Alright. So we put the pin into the receptacle, and it slides down to about there. And like I say, you don't need to do this, but this is a little bit more proper, and it means that if the spring inside here fails at some point in the future, or if you just want to try a different type of head on here, like I said, we've got the conical one and the spiky one. There's a whole bunch of other ones too. There's ones that's just like a plain single point, and there's fatter conical ones, all different styles. But if you decide that this one's not working for you, you can just take it out of the receptacle and try another one. So that's what's going on here. So I've got some with just the receptacles there. Gonna have to put my finger in here to get it to focus probably. Alright, so you can see they're quite well made most of the time, but I found a couple here that are not quite the same height. Anyway, so that's how they're gonna sit. And then down here they go into there. And because I made everything on the CNC very precisely, everything's all perfectly straight, and the pins are sticking out quite a bit under here still. That's why I've got these plates here, just so that when I put it down they don't bump into the desk. But the idea is that you would get everything, put all of the pins in, hold them like this a bit, and then you'd solder those on there and then clip them off so that they're short, I guess. And then you'll probably find that when you put your board on, it's going to be, for one thing, it's going to be quite difficult to get it on in the right place. And also when you try and push it down, my one's actually not so bad, but if you didn't have quite such a good jig as I have, you'd probably find it slopping side to side, which is bad because these things are quite fragile and they'll get bent. So that's why I've made this other piece here. This is just a piece of acrylic. I started with MDF, and then I realized that I had this 10mm acrylic sitting around that I hadn't used for years. 6 years ago I bought this, and I thought might as well use it for something. And then I've just got some double-sided tape on the bottom there. I haven't stuck this down yet, but this is going to stick on there, and it's all exactly the same size, so I can just line it up like that. And when it's in the right place, the idea is it'll be very easy then to just plop that on, and obviously I'm not going to take it away. It's going to stay stuck there, but the point is it makes it very quick and easy to get everything in the right place. And then when you push it down, I'll need to place a heavy weight or something on, or a little sort of a spring clip to push that down, hold it in place while it's flashing. But the point is that lines everything up very nicely, and you can see all those pins are going into their proper, oh well, you can't see it because it's not focusing, but yeah, alright, well yeah, some of the springs have slightly stronger springiness to them too, so whoops, that didn't sound good. Yeah, I don't think it was quite in the right place anymore. But if I leave this thing on around it, it's no problem. I think I might have just broken something there actually. Can't see a damn thing because I haven't got my glasses on. I'm getting old, guys. Is this what it's like to get old? Can't see anything up close anymore. What happened there? Oh, I see. Yeah, see, this is what I was saying. If those... Wait, did that slip down inside there? See how this one's a different height? I managed to push it down somehow. Yeah, I think I just pushed on it too hard. I guess there's a limit to how hard you can push on these without having problems. I was pushing on them quite hard before while I was playing around with it. There was no problems. As soon as I turn the camera on, we have a problem. But anyway, what I was going to say is that you also need to, when you press down, you need to press down at the approximate average position of all these pins. So, for example, if I have one way over here and then 3 here at the moment, when I press down on that, it goes down more on this side if I press in the middle. So I need to press more closer to where these 3 are if I want it to go straight down. So that's something else you need to consider. Anyway, I've waffled far too long about this. Let me get it all soldered up and I'll stick this on and see if I can get this flashing or getting it ready for flashing. Okay, here's these receptacles all soldered on. Okay, it's a while later now, and I think I've figured everything out. As usual, there were a few issues. The first thing I came across was that when you put these pogo pins into the receptacles and you just sort of slot them in there gently, they end up all over the place height-wise, but as you can see, they're quite leveled. They're all consistent at the same height now. And I think what you're supposed to do is you're actually supposed to push them in a little bit to get them to the height that you want. Otherwise, when you pick this up and if you tip it upside down, they all fall out. Well, most of them fall out, the ones that were sticking out more. So I think that's probably how you're supposed to do it. I'm not sure. Probably a little bit more important issue I had was that I started off using this. I've got it working with my Raspberry Pi now there, but initially I was just doing testing with this, and I found that I think this thing was browning out was what the issue was, because when I put my board in there and I pressed it down just a little bit on this corner, it was okay. But if I pressed it down any more so that more of these other pins would turn on, then this little LED in here that's supposed to stay on solid all the time would start flashing, and then this ST-Link dongle would need to be replugged again to get it to work. So I think that was just a power issue, but I'm not quite sure why that would be. I guess it's because I have all of these LEDs with resistors. I guess at the moment that you plug it in, it just sort of caused a little bit of current to pull through, and then this thing freaked out and it wasn't able to work anymore. But the solution to that is to power it separately, of course. So what I've done here is I'm using a UBEC that gives 5 volts instead of 3 volts. So another thing I changed was that instead of supplying 3 volts to my board through the single wire debug port there, I'm now supplying 5 volts to the 5 volt rail of the IO mixer, which is the middle of these rows here. And I probably should have been doing that anyway, because I kind of need to do that to power these RGB LEDs properly, and it also lets me test that the 3.3 volt regulator over there is working properly as well. So I probably should have done that to begin with. Anyway, that's what I'm doing now, and I've set up my Raspberry Pi with openocd, and I've also set up a little Python script that runs when you turn the Raspberry Pi on. So let me just plug this in and I'll see if I can show you it working. So I'm just going to connect a 12 volt battery over here and turn that on, and the Raspberry Pi will boot up. It takes 20 seconds or so. Now these LEDs I've got here, the yellow one will turn on when my Python program is ready to go, and then the one over here, which is actually purple, that will be on when the program is being flashed, and then it will turn off. So that just lets me know that I should be waiting and not pulling my board out of the bed of nails. And any moment that yellow LED will turn on. I'll just put my board in here while I'm waiting. So we put this in here, and it's I'm just using this sort of stretchy rubber strap thing here to hold the board in, along with a piece of hard foam like that. It's not really ideal. Okay, so you can see the yellow LED is on there now, so we're ready to go. But the way I've been doing it, which is quick enough, is I just lift this rubber strap up, put the board underneath there like that, and you can see hopefully there's a green LED going, so it's got power. And then I push this button here to run. Hang on, let me just see if I can get this out of the way, because we want to see these LEDs here. So I push this button, it flashes my testbed program, which is going to turn the RGB LEDs on, and it makes them sort of pretty colors like that. And you can't see it too well in the video, unfortunately, but these other two LEDs on the top there are flashing at about 20 times per second. They're just turning off and on, as are all of the ones down here. Unfortunately, in the camera, in the video, it looks like they're turning off and on very slowly because of the refresh rate of the camera, I suppose. And you'll also notice, oh, you can sort of see them there, yeah. So that's not quite what they look like in real life. But you will notice that not all of them are lit up, and that's because my rubber band and my hard foam block are not pressing down hard enough. But if I press down more there, whoops, I press down more like that, whoa, look at that, you can see it sort of scrolling through. But that will light up all of the LEDs, and I can just check that every pin is connected to where it should be, and that all of those lights are on and going. Wow, doesn't look like that. When you're actually looking at it, not in the camera, they're all just flashing very quickly. But anyway, so once I see that everything is okay there, then I just push this other button like that, and this will flash the actual firmware and the bootloader all together in one go. And this is about 160 kilobytes of flashing, so it takes a little bit longer. Probably gonna, okay, it's finished. And you would have seen just a quick little double flash of the blue LED, and then that board is done. So the only thing I need to do now, really, that would make life a bit easier, is to put this all onto a board, like a piece of wood together, so that it's all stuck together nice and tidy, and maybe do something about this at some point, although to be honest I'm probably going to be too lazy to get a proper clamp. I've seen clamps where you have like a lever and you press down on the lever to clamp the board in place. And when I first saw those, I thought, wow, you don't really need that much force, do you, to push these down? But it's amazing how much the small force of each one of these little pins adds up when you put them all together. And to get all of these LEDs to show up like I was just before, I had to press it down quite hard. But I think for my purposes, I'm just going to be happy enough to, just press it down like I was just now to see that all the LEDs are going. So we'll show you a little bit of the software side of it. It's very simple actually to set up. Okay, so I'll just quickly show you the web pages where I found all the information to do this, and I'll put the links to these in the description below. This page here gives you all the steps that you need to go through to use your Raspberry Pi, well, as it says there, as a single iDebug programmer to flash. Well, it's doing it for some other thing called a Xenon board, which to be honest I don't even know what that is, but it works for STM32 and other things as well. So if you scroll down here, you'll see some command line stuff. You can basically just copy that in, paste it, run it, copy and paste all that in and run it, and you're good to go. At least that will set up openocd to use the GPIO pins on Raspberry Pi to do the flashing. That's what that is doing there. Then you need to prepare a configuration file to use, and in my case I needed to do this for STM32 F1, which is the type of board that I'm flashing. And so this bit here is the contents of the file that you will need to use, although like I said, he's using some other board. He's using this thing here, the Xenon board. So for my case I needed to change that just a little bit, and I'll put a link to this file. I'll put this on my website somewhere, I guess, and you can, oops, that's not it. This is it here. So the red stuff is just comments, and the black stuff is what you need to actually get it done. And importantly, you need to say here STM32F1X and this little bit here, I think. And I'm using pins 24 and 25. And I think I also needed to do something here. I can't remember. It's actually about 3 or 4 months ago that I figured this part out. Anyway, so that's the configuration file you'd need, and I've named that openocd STM32f1.config. And then to actually do the flashing, you would run a command like this. So you do sudo openocd and then -f to say what is the configuration file. That's the one we just looked at there. And then you need to give a list of commands in quotes here about what you actually want to do. And in my case, what I wanted to do was program the firmware. So you say program and then the file, the bin file that you want to flash. And then you want to verify, reset, and exit. If you don't do the exit, it leaves this openocd stays around running as a server, which is not really what you want, or at least not in this case, because I wanted to have this process finished so that my LED could turn off and I can continue and run another process later on. So that's why I've got the exit in there. And rather strangely, you put the address for the flashing, for the writing, right at the end after. Seems to me it would be more natural to go program firmware and then the address and then verify, reset, exit. Anyway, that's how it works. And then, so this is my Python script that I'm running. I'll just go back to the web page, websites again, where I got this from, just to give this guy a little bit of credit. So this Jimmy N guy basically gave me all the info here to do this. He's using it to turn his backlight off and on with a button, but I've modified that a little bit to do what I showed you before, obviously. So we just set up a couple of LEDs, one to show whether the program is alive and ready to be used, and then flashing means that, flashing LEDs is kind of a bad name, isn't it? It makes it sound like the LED's turning off and on, but this is the one this was the purple one that turns on during the flashing process. And then we set up a couple of buttons on GPIOs 2 and 3, and then if we go down here we have a detection of a falling edge on those 2 pins, and that's going to call a different callback function in each case. So I've got flash the test bed, that's the one that makes the lights flash, and then flash both is where I flash the firmware and the bootloader for my actual IO mixer firmware. So that's the functions here, and they just call flash file with a different file name in each case, like that. And then to actually flash the file, we turn the flashing LED on, turn the flashing LED off afterwards, and then inside here we call basically a shell command, and this is the one that we saw before. So this is going to call openocd with the parameters and then whichever file name that we've passed in there, and then it also does a little bit at the end here to log, just in case something goes wrong. I can look at the log and see what happened. And then to set this up as something that runs when the Raspberry Pi starts up, you can find that information here, 5 ways to do it, and I used the System D, I think it's called, this one here, and I don't think there's really anything special that I need to explain there. It's all just going through that pretty normally. One thing that is important with that is that you need to give full path names for everything that you're going to be calling, all of the files and all of the executables that you're going to use, and the log file location. Everything has to have a full path when you do that with the System D. And that's about it for this video. I will tidy this up and make it a little bit more of a permanent installation, and I've already done all of these. All the boards I had I already did, because it became so easy and just kind of enjoyable to just pop them in there and push the button, and now they're all done. So yeah, I guess it works. Anyway, thanks for watching.